Welcome, I'm Kriti Mehta and you're watching a World Report on NewsX World. Let's take a look at the top headlines this hour. Death toll after the massive fire in a Hong Kong complex apartment rises to 65. More than 250 people remain missing. The Hong Kong police have arrested 3 construction company officials. 11 people have reportedly lost their lives in a deadly train collision in China's southern province on Yunnan. At least 2 people have been injured in the collision. Two U.S. National Guard soldiers shot and critically wounded near White House in what U.S. is calling a targeted attack. The suspect in the shooting was identified as Rahman Nalla, who is reportedly an Afghan national. U.S. takes a reflex action to suspend all Afghan immigration. Ukraine says its negotiating team will meet U.S. officials soon, with Foreign Minister Andriy Sybiha stating that Kyiv will focus on specific steps in peace proposals. The United States is intensifying its efforts to combat drug trafficking in the Caribbean, with Defense Secretary Pete Hegseth announcing plans to expand military deployments in the region. Amid the escalating rift between China and Japan, U.S. President Donald Trump urges Japanese Prime Minister Sanae Takaichi to avoid further escalation. As per reports, this comes as U.S. aims to keep trade truce with China. Japan, however, denies Chinese claims. British Finance Minister Rachel Reeves announces more than $34 billion in tax rises. This is on top of the £40 billion she raised last year. As a result, a large hit to growth of living standards been expected. Pakistan's Army Chief Asim Munir takes charge as the country's first Chief of Defense Forces. As CDF, Munir's tenure has also been reset. Amendments have extended his tenure till at least 2030. And now we have some breaking news coming in at the top of the bulletin from Sri Lanka. In the latest updates, we are learning that at least 31 people have been confirmed dead and 14 others missing as the country continues to face one of its worst weather-related disasters that it did in the recent years. Sri Lankan President Anura Kumara Dissanayake convened an emergency meeting earlier today with disaster management officials, opposition leaders and senior armed forces to discuss strategies to mitigate the impacts of the crisis. Authorities warn that persistent heavy rainfall, which is expected to reach up to 200 millimeters, could trigger additional landslides and floods, particularly in central and hilly regions. This now raises concerns over further damage and casualties. And now let's move on to news from Russia. President Vladimir Putin has stated today that a peace plan discussed by the United States and Ukraine could serve as the foundation for future agreements to end the ongoing conflict in Ukraine. While acknowledging some points still need to be addressed, Putin expressed that Russia would continue fighting if Ukraine refuses to withdraw from contested territories. Listen in.
Мы перед моим визитом в США, перед визитом на Аляску, обсуждали это с американскими переговорщиками. И после этого возник вот тот перечень возможных договоренностей из 28 пунктов. И, как я уже объявлял публично, он нам по определенным каналам был передан. Мы с ним ознакомились. После этого состоялись переговоры в Женеве между американской делегацией и украинской делегацией. И они, я так понял, между собой решили, что все эти 28 пунктов нужно разделить на 4 составляющих.
And slamming the Europe and its allies, Putin also indicated that Russia is prepared to offer a security pledge to Europe, but only if Ukraine's military pulls back. He reiterated Russia's stance that Ukrainian leadership is illegitimate, making it difficult to negotiate directly with Kyiv. As Russian forces reportedly advance faster across Ukraine, Putin made it clear that Russia would use military force to achieve its goals if Ukraine does not comply. He rejected accusations that U.S. envoy Steve Witkoff had shown bias towards Moscow in peace talks, calling the suggestion completely nonsense. Listen in.
Дипломатический язык.
Потому что одно дело, в общем, сказать, что Россия не собирается нападать на Европу. Это для нас звучит смешно, правда? Никогда не собирались, но если они хотят услышать от нас, ну давайте мы это зафиксируем. Вопросов нет. Если они напугали своих граждан, и те хотят услышать, что мы не собираемся, и у нас в планах нет, никаких агрессивных нет планов в отношении Европы, пожалуйста, мы готовы это зафиксировать как угодно. Может быть, в этом и есть смысл, имея в виду, если мы хотим все вместе поговорить и обсудить, и какие-то точки расставить в вопросах. Значит, мы до сих пор получаем заходы о прекращении боевых действий там. Войска Украины уйдут из занимаемых ими территорий, вот тогда и прекратятся боевые действия. Не уйдут, мы добьемся этого вооруженным путем. Темп движения наших войск по этим всем направлениям увеличивается заметно. Но вот я сейчас просто не хочу совершать какой-то ошибки такой по количеству километров, но из месяца в месяц количество, так скажем, возвращаемых нашими войсками территорий на всех основных направлениях увеличивается. То есть темп движения войск увеличивается. Но самая, на мой взгляд, главная проблема для...
Let's now welcome Mark Sutherland, who is a geopolitical expert, joining us live from London into this discussion here at NewsX World. Thanks, Mark, for joining us here. Now, Putin clearly is adamant. He says he will achieve its goal in Ukraine if Ukraine does not withdraw its military. There's a very strong statement being made by Putin once again. What options is Ukraine really left with?
Pretty good to be with you. Well, it's the classic Mexican standoff, and the fact that people could see this coming, if I may say, in my humble opinion, for some time, because Russia has taken land. There's been a million people killed on the Russian side, and up to that kind of amount on the Ukrainian side, with all the devastation that has come with it, and the attacks on their infrastructure, etc. It's appalling. You attack a sovereign state in February 2022. And the negotiations are, according to what Putin, what the administration, what the president is saying, what Russians are saying, is we have taken this land and we just wish the Ukrainian forces to withdraw, and that will then be the end of that. And of course, as Lavrov has said, there's been a peace agreement on the table since January, February 2024. So how you negotiate this is going to be profoundly difficult. Sadly, I can't see the comments that Putin and then the other Russian then made. This is going to be extremely difficult then to negotiate if Zelensky turns around and says, understandably, no, we are not moving back, because how much more then territory will they then take? And also, as the Russians have put forward, to say, well, come under our wing, we will defend you, security is down to us. And then understandably, the Ukrainian people will turn around and say, well, if we do that, then look at what happened in 2022. And I don't say any of this to be clever. We have to go back to this, that sadly, wrongly, a country was then, a sovereign country was then invaded. The problem is all then the fallout of that. And you are fully aware in regard to Zelensky, one of his ex-business partners, who then started his production company. There was all this accusation of fraud. Where is money going? the previous American administration under the Biden administration have put billions of dollars into Ukraine. We, within the UK and other European countries, have been sending them armaments as well. And I have, on many occasions on this program, have said we want this war to end. We need to get people around the negotiation table seriously for this then to do so. Kriti.
Well, thank you, Mark. But do stay on with us, as I would like you to share your perspective on another key development, this one coming from Italy. Now, a Ukrainian man suspected of coordinating the 2022 Nord Stream pipeline sabotage has arrived in Germany. His transfer follows approval by Italy's top court last week. The explosion severely disrupted Russian gas deliveries to Europe, and both Russia and Western countries have called it an act of sabotage. Identified as a Serie K under German privacy laws, the suspect denies any involvement. German prosecutors say he has been part of a group that planted devices on the pipelines near the Danish island of Bornholm. He now faces charges including collusion to cause an explosion, anti-constitutional sabotage, and destruction of critical infrastructure. Now, the suspect was detained in Italy last August and will appear before an investigating judge in Karlsruhe tomorrow. Investigators have spent years piecing together the mystery behind this high-profile sabotage case. I request Mark to join us back here on this discussion. Mark, now this is a significant step forward in the probe where the suspect has now been moved to Frankfurt for further prosecution. How do you see this proceeding from here?
There's another man that's accused who is in Poland, and the Polish authorities, it's been reported, have not handed him over to the German authorities yet. That is floating there. The bombing of the Nord Stream pipeline was extremely serious, followed by a very well-known journalist in America, Seymour Hersh. So this was then came out. There were many theories. How was this done deliberately? Did various people know about this at the time? And it's extremely serious. So it is this prosecution then to actually hand him to Germany because of the fallout. We're also in this ideological debate where people want to get rid of fossil fuel. The deindustrialization of Europe also comes, and the stupidity of that also comes into this. But also then wanting to frame this whole thing, understandably, as we've just said, the Russian invasion. But it then goes across this whole framing, then there can be accusations on all sides who blew up what, because this is an important gas pipeline that comes from Russia that goes into, then is feeding Europe, feeding Germany. And just quickly, the other thing is that the Russians have said that, or the chatter is a number of years ago that they'd already begun to slow down the amount of gas that they were then supplying to Europe, which is always an interesting discussion, because as you and I know we've discussed on this channel, is the fact that what gives the Russians the war chest to continue to their war in the Ukraine is the fact that they are selling energy around the world and with all their ghost ships, etc. So that is the reality. And it was more the fallout of all the accusations of who did it, who didn't do it, and we ended up going down the conspiracy rabbit hole. Kriti.
All right, Mark, and like you did mention about the other suspect who remains not transferred, do you think Poland is going to relent as far as the handing over of this Ukrainian suspect is concerned?
Well, we've just had there was a bombing of rail tracks in regard to train tracks there. We wonder who had actually done that. The Polish authorities at the moment have not We wait to see if Mr. Tusk, President, is going to be pushed on that. I think it is important that these people are then brought to justice, because the other thing is, without sounding too conspiratorial in my humble opinion, we could end up being at an Archduke Ferdinand situation like the First World War, an incident and then sparks things and then things escalate. I have used that over the last few weeks to refer to that. It's very important that everyone keeps a cool head. But if people have done wrong, then they need to be passed back. This had an effect on I believe, on the German economy. It's not particularly pleasant if someone then bombs a pipeline, as we've seen elsewhere in the world, to stop energy flowing, and then the ramifications then on the citizens of your particular country. We will wait and see. It all depends how that unfolds in Germany, and maybe behind the scenes as well. The fact that Europe is trying to keep a united front, particularly where Russia, of course, is concerned, it will be behind the scenes that these conversations that we're not privy to may be going on. Kriti.
All right. I thank you for now, Mark, for joining us and sharing your opinions with us here at NewsX World. With that, viewers, let's move on. We have some breaking developments coming in from Hong Kong as far as the apartment firing is concerned. Now, authorities have confirmed that the death toll has risen to at least 75. The fire, which broke out at a high-rise apartment complex in the early hours yesterday, has left many dozens more injured, and scores are still missing as firefighters continue to search through the charred remains. Despite over 24 hours of firefighting efforts, flames were still visible in parts of the complex, which houses nearly 2,000 units across 8 buildings. The fire's cause remains under investigation, with authorities focusing on the role of bamboo scaffolding and plastic mesh used in the ongoing renovations at the site. Now, moving on, viewers, the Israeli military has carried out a series of strikes against Hezbollah in southern Lebanon, targeting terror infrastructure, weapon storage sites, and military posts. The strikes come exactly a year after a ceasefire was established between Israel and the militant group. Lebanon's state news agency reported that Israeli aircraft launched raids in the Jazin area, hitting multiple targets linked to the Iran-backed group. Israel says it will continue operations to remain and remove any threat to the state. Under the ceasefire agreement, Hezbollah was put to pull forces north of the Litani River and dismantle infrastructure south of it. The Lebanese army is carrying out this plan, but the US and Israel have accused authorities of delays. Repeated Israeli strikes, including one last Sunday that killed a senior Hezbollah commander, highlight continuing tension. Israeli Defense Minister warned that security must be guaranteed or there will be no calm in Lebanon. Gedalia Blum, who's a Middle East affairs expert, now joins us live from Eli in Israel. I hope that I got that name right.
That's pretty good. Thank you so much. Yeah.
All right, thank you. Thank you for joining us here at NewsX World. Now, I first broadly want to see your opinions on the latest development.
I mean, listen, it's very clear. I mean, we like to talk about a ceasefire that was put in place a year ago, but we have to look into the details of what that ceasefire actually required. The ceasefire wasn't just that Israel needs to cease fire or that Hezbollah just needs to cease fire. There was 2 other very significant components to the deal, which was that Hezbollah needed to move 30 kilometers north of from the Israeli border, which they have not. The second thing is that the Lebanese government needed to disarm Hezbollah. Those 2 things are not only not happening, but the opposite is actually happening. Hezbollah is rearming; they're not being disarmed, and their stronghold is being rebuilt. So Israel can continue to follow through with its part of the deal, while the other side continues to violate it. but that would actually put Israel in a much a worse situation, and not only Israel in the worst situation, but also the people of Lebanon, because if Hezbollah gets stronger and gets strong enough to feel that they could actually fight Israel, which they don't feel that way now, but if they do, it's going to open up the war again in a very significant and devastating way for the people, not only of Israel, but from Lebanon. So if it's really up to the international community, the Lebanese government, I know Trump recently today had given its reiterated the deadline for disarmament on for December 31st of this year. And, you know, we'll see what happens. But in the meantime, I think it's the responsibility for Israel and its defense establishment to ensure that if Hezbollah is not fulfilling its role of being 30 kilometers away from the border of Israel, then they become a legitimate target. And if the Lebanese government does not stop disarming and we see the rearming, we will continue to attack the supply lines and the missile silos. That's just we don't want to, but we have to. And this is Israel's position.
But is it not likely that these further strikes by Israel is further going to deter these Lebanese militants from disarming, as is clearly the case? They continue to blame Israel and US for stalling the process of ceasefire and disarmament.
No, listen. No, I mean, there's absolutely no ceasefire agreement. You could call it a ceasefire, and, you know, which both sides decided to cease fire according to an agreement that one side is not fulfilling. You know, like I said. And so when it comes down to it, by Israel striking Hezbollah, it's certainly not an escalation, it's a de-escalation. It's doing a favor. You know, there's always been a saying in the Middle East that Lebanon would be the first to make peace with Israel, but they have to be the last because they're the weakest. And the government of Lebanon is extremely weak. They've been taken over. I mean, listen, you know, the fact of the matter is, what other sovereign country allows a foreign army to take over? That's exactly what happened in Lebanon. And so we are actually doing the Lebanese a favor. There's many people in Lebanon who are very happy that Israel is striking Hezbollah. This is not a war between Israel and Lebanon. In fact, I believe at some point, Israel is going to be seen as liberators of Lebanon, and the people are going to be extremely happy. And I believe that the people of Israel would be going to Beirut, and the people of Lebanon would be coming to Tel Aviv. I think we're natural peace partners. Unfortunately, the jihad that has come from Iran and has been invested for the last 40 years into Lebanon has not only destroyed any semblance of peace between Israel and Lebanon, but it's destroyed the people and the country of Lebanon. Lebanon used to be, they used to call it the Paris of the Middle East, and now it's just a terrible place to live.
All right. Well, thank you, Mr. Blum, for joining us here at NewsX World for now and sharing your opinion. And viewers, with that, we will shift our focus to some more breaking news developments. Pope Leo has visited Turkey as part of the first overseas trip of his papacy, and he has urged the country to embrace its role as a mediator between nations. His remarks soon followed significant talks with Turkish President Recep Tayyip Erdogan. Let's listen in to what Pope Leo said during the meeting.
Mr. President, may Turkey be a source of stability and rapprochement between peoples, in service of a just and lasting peace. Today, more than ever, we need people who will promote dialogue and practice it with firm will and patient resolve. In the aftermath of the tragedies of 2 world wars, which saw the building of large international organizations, we are now experiencing a phase marked by heightened level of conflict on the global level, fueled by prevailing strategies of economic and military power. This is enabling what Pope Francis called a third world war fought piecemeal. We must in no way give in to this.
And Pope Leo also stressed the value of religious plurality. He further highlighted that Christians in Turkey feel part of the country's identity and desire to contribute their best to national unity. The Turkish president responded to Pope's remarks and thanked him for considering his first visit to Turkey. Let's listen in.
Kendilerinin göreve başladıktan sonra ilk yurt dışı seyahatini Türkiye'ye gerçekleştirmesini her bakımdan çok anlamlı buluyorum.
And moving on to some news from France now, two French prisoners escaped from a jail in Dijon after sawing through cell bars and using bed sheets to flee. Authorities have made the statement. Now, guards noticed the breakout shortly before dawn. The fugitives are a 19-year-old held for attempted murder and a 33-year-old incarcerated for threats and violence. Union officials said they used manual saw blades to cut the bars. The escape comes just 10 days after another prison break in Rennes, where a convict fled during a planetarium outing. France's prisons are among Europe's most overcrowded, with Dijon housing 311 inmates in 180 places. Staff unions criticized the justice minister for focusing on high security prisons while neglecting regular facilities, calling for more staff and stronger security. The Dijon prison is scheduled to receive $7.3 million to improve security and remove mobile phones. Let's listen in to one of the released prisoners.
J'ai pris un an ferme, j'ai fait 8 mois plein, complet. Voilà. J'ai eu des remises de peine, vous savez, 4 mois de remise de peine pour bonne conduite. Ah bah,
Vous les connaissiez, les détenus qui sont échappés
Que un, je connaissais, que je voyais en promenade, c'est tout.
Et vous n'avez jamais parlé, j'imagine, de ce projet?
Non, jamais. On n'a jamais cru que ça laissait ça avoir, quoi. Ah, c'est sûr, oui, il faut calculer et tout. Mais après, on ne sait pas ce qu'ils font les gens. Hein. Moi, ils étaient plus, vous savez, ils n'étaient pas dans mon bâtiment, ils étaient en bas, isolement. Ils n'étaient pas dans mon bâtiment. Voilà. C'est la prison de Dijon, c'est pas comme les nouvelles prisons qu'ils ont mis les narcotrafiquants qui est surveillé à fond, quoi. C'est pas pareil, c'est une maison d'arrêt.
Ici, c'est pas bien surveillé.
Si, ça s'est renforcé. Vous savez, ils ont changé les grilles, ils ont remis des grilles et tout au barreau. Et ils contrôlent plus souvent maintenant la cellule pour voir si la grille n'a pas été touchée. Ça, ils ont renforcé. Mais bon, il y a eu ça, quoi. Ils n'ont pas fini tous les travaux.
And that's all the time we have for. Keep watching NewsX World for more news updates from across the world.